So today's program is called Bat Bonanza, and this is a fun program that I've done before at some other parks, and I've modified it for online and for sharing on this and to show y'all. So I'm really excited. Actually, Bethany, I'm sorry, I need to back up. I guess really quick, I should introduce myself really quick since I was already talking to everybody. Sorry, Bethany. Okay, I'm gonna quick. Okay, so real quick. So yeah, I am Holly Platz. I am the park interpreter here at Guadalupe River State Park. I've been here at this park for 2 years. And what that means, park interpreter, is that I get to plan and do almost all of the outreach and education we get to do, which is pretty awesome. So I've been at this position in this park for 2 years, but I've been doing this job for Texas State Parks for 8 years this fall. So I'm really passionate about sharing nature with kids and adults. So it's always fun to talk to a group with lots more grown-ups, because oftentimes I talk to groups of kids. So it's just fun, different dynamics for everything. So again, y'all are being very nice audience already with my lack of a Zoom experience. Okay, I'm gonna stop the video and share my screen again. I am going to get back to this. Cool. Okay, so I call this Bat Bonanza. And the reason I call this Bat Bonanza is bonanza just means something that's really valuable, really profitable, or rewarding. So what I want to talk to y'all about today is how bats actually help people and wildlife, or people in the environment, I'm sorry. And we're going to find out how, and I'm also going to talk about some different bats that live in the hill country, and we'll also go over some common myths or fears or misconception about bats. And like I said, I'm super excited and open to questions, comments, all that kind of stuff. Okay. So a lot of times people think of bats as they think of them as birds, or they think of them as, mice with wings. And neither one is the case. Bats are mammals. They're the only mammals that can fly. They're actually the only mammals with wings. So when you hear about flying squirrels, they don't actually fly, they just glide. So it's really cool, bats being in this order called Chiroptera, and it means hand wing. And the cool thing about that is if you look at that picture of the bat, I don't know if y'all can y'all see my mouse?
Mm-hmm.
Yes? Okay, good. Oh, yes. Okay, so if you were to put your hand up to this picture of the bat, you see the wrist, and then you see this, that's the upper arm. And then on this side, we have the thumb, we have the second finger, and then we have the fourth finger, the fifth finger. So that's, you can tell why scientists decided to call it hand wing. Just like if we were to put our hand up to that wing, fingers, and their bones in there that make up their wing. So bats being mammals, they are very, very diverse. There's many different kinds of bats. There's actually 1,400 different kinds of bats, 1,419. When I first researched this program a few years ago, it was, actually 2012, that was a little bit ago, but there were about 1,200 some bat species, and now scientists there's 1,400 species. So that's there's a lot scientists are still learning about bats, which is really exciting. And actually 1/5 of all mammal species in the world, 1/5 of those are bats. So there's a lot. That's a lot of different kinds of bats. So pretty cool stuff. So they're in their own special group. And so we talked about how environment. So of course we've all heard of, or many of us probably have heard of bat echolocation, and how that works is pretty cool. So if you have you have the bat making clicking noises, and they make the clicking noises with their nose and their mouth. And some different kinds of bats will have a really funny looking face with a crazy looking nose. And sometimes that is because they'll make those noises with their nose, and they'll send out the clicking noises. And when these sound waves hit the bug or the wall or you, which is sound waves, won't hurt you, and then the sound waves travel back, you can see that by the yellow here. Lost my mouse for a minute. So the really cool thing about bat echolocation is that by echolocating the bat, not only can tell, you know, where the insect is or where you are, so it's not going to run into you because you're way too big to eat, but it also can tell like how fast that insect is flying, if it's a soft-bodied insect, like say a moth, or a hard-bodied insect, like say a beetle. So that's a really cool thing. And of course, bats do eat a lot of insects and other arthropods, basically creepy crawlies, like the guy on the right is a pallid bat eating a centipede. So bats eat many, many insects. They do a huge, I would say favor. They perform a service that saves farmers and thus the economy millions of dollars. Here in the hill country alone, we have in the summertime 200 million Mexican free-tailed bats, a certain kind of bat that come here in the summer. They eat 1,000 tons of this is just in the hill country, okay? Just in the hill country, these Mexican free-tailed bats eat 1,000 tons of insects a night, which is kind of hard to fathom. So it actually is 200 school buses. Yeah, it's a lot of insects. And yes, so we talk about bats eating mosquitoes, and yes, they do, but actually they do eat mosquitoes, but some of the other even bigger impacts, I would say, is there's a moth called the cotton bollworm moth, and the little caterpillar of that is a really huge pest for farmers. And so that and other pests that affect farmers, that is where bats eating of insects is a huge benefit. I mean, they'll eat mosquitoes, but you know, mosquitoes are really small. They do eat a lot of insects. They eat their weight in insects each night. So yeah, they do a lot of good for us. Okay, something else. There we go. I was clicking on that screen on accident. So sometimes people don't realize bats are pollinators, and this is really cool because when we think of pollinators, usually we think of bees and, you know, butterflies and hummingbirds, which are great pollinators, and they're kind of like, most people like those, right? But sometimes people don't like bats, and it's important to know that bats are pollinators too. There are more than 550 different species of plants that are pollinated by bats. So if you like bananas, if you like peaches, if you like chocolate, those, which I like all three of those very much, those are all plants that are pollinated by bats. So that's a really big deal. I have a really cool picture here of showing it in detail. So this is a bat that is, I don't know if it's found in Texas, but this would be like, if the bats in Texas that pollinate are West Texas species generally. So the bats in the hill country eat insects. They are not pollinators. So the ones in West Texas, and then like Arizona, New Mexico, desert bats, so he's coming up to the night blooming cactus, which is super cool because the cactus is designed to bloom at night, right? Here comes the bat, and he sticks his big old schnoz in there, and he's got a big old tongue. There's a type of bat called a long-tongued bat. I don't know if that's this one or not, but the bat sticks his tongue in there and he laps up the nectar. You know, he's after the yummy nectar, the juice in the bottom of the flower. But in the meantime, he gets all this pollen on his face, and he's just such a disaster, covered with pollen dust. So then, of course, when he goes to the next flower, he spreads that. And so bats are really important pollinators. They're also really good at seed dispersal. So this is not a North American bat thing, but there are other species of bat. Like if you've read I'm sorry, I have my radio on. I'm glad that went off, so we can turn it off. If you have ever read the kids book Stella Luna, which is a really cute kids book about bats, yeah. So that's a fruit bat. So fruit bats, which are the flying foxes, like you see sometimes, that are more kind of charismatic of bats with the big, huge eyes. They will eat fruit, and they're really important for actually reforesting areas like the Amazon rainforest areas have been cleared. Bats play a huge role in actually what they call pioneer species of plants that are growing and where it's been cleared. So they'll help make new forests. So that's a really big deal. Again, I mean, you could kind of say, oh, well, that doesn't affect the US, although really, of course it does, because of all those trees in the rainforest, all that's all, it all affects us. But really, really interesting stuff. Let's see. Does anybody have any questions or comments at the moment? You can just say something. I can hear you, I think.
It looks like he's kind of hovering. Is he kind of like a hummingbird where he hovers over the night?
Yeah. Good question. I'm not going to tell you for positive because I don't want to say the wrong thing. However, I believe they do because, for example, I've been to a high desert museum in Tucson in Arizona, and I believe here at the San Antonio Zoo they have a bat area. I know they do, and you can go in the dark room and you can see them, and they come to the, like hummingbird feeders, and they do. So yeah, good point. Yeah, bats are incredibly amazing in the way they can fly. I mean, one of the ways that they will catch insects when I'm going to go back to this picture. So if you look at this picture here, that showed, this is his membrane, it says tail membrane. This area here is called the uropatagium. And one thing that's really interesting is one way that bats will eat insects is they're echolocating, so they make their noise and it kind of gets faster, and it kind of goes to a buzz when they get faster because they're making their clicked noises, and to like click, 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 and then and it eats it, it whams into the insect and it eats it. So one of the really interesting ways that it does that once it gets to the insect is it'll knock it out of the sky, and then the insect will fall down here into that tail membrane, and then the bat will curl up its tail membrane and put the insect into its mouth from there. So that's really amazing. You can see they're very acrobatic, right?
That's great.
Holly, we had a written question. Do you know what percentage of bats are pollinators?
I do not know, and I know I'm sorry, I don't know. I can definitely find that out, and I would be happy to. I actually really would be happy to, but not off the top of my head, no. Yes, ma'am, Linda.
I've seen more bats this summer than previous summers. Is it because people are staying home? I don't know. Or is the wind out of a different direction? But when I'm outside at night, I've been seeing more bats this summer. Not every night. The wind has to be a certain direction. I live between Beck Road and Rimrock, and they come straight from where you assume Bracken Cave is.
Sure.
But I've just seen more of them this summer.
I couldn't tell you. I haven't heard anything in terms of there's more around. Are you out and about more this summer? I mean, not out and about, but like, because we're home more, do you think maybe you're just outside more at night also?
Possible. See, we're in the country, and we get in the swimming pool, and right at dusk, that's when you see them coming overhead. So, but we're always out during the summer. I don't know. I don't know.
That's interesting. I haven't heard anything. That doesn't mean, there couldn't be anything I don't know about for sure. But no, I don't know. I know that, of course, depending, like you said, on the weather and, for example, normally, non-COVID times, San Antonio River Authority put on a really fun festival mid-August called Bat Loco. It's really fun. And in the hottest time of the summer, it's just oppressive hot, but if it's really hot, sometimes the bats will wait to come out because they're waiting for temperature or they can come out earlier. I think maybe they come out earlier when it's hot. I'm sorry, I misspoke. Anyway, temperature affects when they come out. Also weather, of course, like if it's pouring down rain, they're not gonna, because you think about the bugs are out, they're after the bugs. So if it's pouring down rain, they're gonna come out later. I think actually, I can't remember if they come out later or earlier when it's hot. I should know that, but I do know it affects them is the moral of the story. So, I mean, but yeah, wind I'm not sure though, because I mean, you're normally gonna be in your pool when it's the same type of weather year after year, it's not like, oh, it's cold or super windy, but yeah, I'm not sure. I enjoy seeing them in my neighborhood too. I got to actually check some out of the park the other day, and that's my video that I really hope works in a little while. Okay, good questions and comments. So now we're going to talk about bat myths. So this is, of course, Dracula. So the first thing about vampire bats. Okay, so vampire bats actually are real and they do drink blood, but there's a big caveat I would put in, a big but with an asterisk. So first of all, they're not found in North America. They're in Central and South America. They also, they don't go after people, they don't hunt people down. You know, there's some that like to feed on chickens, some that will feed on cattle. Now, if you're out sleeping in the jungle and aren't, you know, covered, would they maybe bite you? Yeah, they might, you know, but there's a lot of other many unpleasant things in the middle of a jungle if you're not, you know, sleeping. I wouldn't want to be out there anyway. But again, they're not anything that's causing problems with people. What's actually really interesting is like I talked about, there are 1,419 species of bats in the whole US. They're on every continent except Antarctica. And out of that, I want to see if y'all can guess. And since only a few of y'all have videos, why don't you do me a favor and do a chat? Tell me how many species of vampire bats you think there are in the world. Show me your chat. Let's see if I can go more chat. Yes. See if I can go to the chat. I can't see the chat. Bethany, you're going to have to help me with the chat. I did.
Okay, Noelle said 200. I said 5.
Much less than 200 and less than 5.
What?
Yeah. Any other guesses? Michelle, so I don't know. 3. You were really close. 3, yeah. 3 species of vampire bats. And out of 1,419. If that was like a pie chart, it'd probably be like not even a line. So very, very few. But like I said, they don't even live here. You don't need to worry about it. And what's really interesting is actually scientists have done studies using the saliva of vampire bats, which this is kind of gross, but it's interesting if you like science, which apparently you must somewhat because you're here at this program. So you know how mosquitoes, when they bite us, they have that, and I hate mosquitoes, we all hate mosquitoes, they have that anticoagulant to make our blood flow so they can drink our blood, right? Well, vampire bats have the same thing, and they actually don't suck blood. They actually make a cut, and then when the blood's flowing, they lick it up like a cat drinking milk. Which is, again, really interesting. I know it's kind of, it's like, ooh, so it's kind of creepy, right? But it's interesting because scientists have used the anticoagulant in vampire bat saliva, and they're working on, you know, for how that could help people, for example, stroke victims. So that's another example of how bats help people, which I think is really fascinating, even the vampire bats. Okay. Okay, other bat myths. For example, they're gonna fly in your hair. They're not interested in flying in your hair. Again, the echolocation is so specific and so high tech that they can actually, scientists have done a study where they took a hair and stretched it across, or a wire that was the width of a hair, and stretched it across a dark room, and the bat could navigate. So they're not interested in getting into your hair. Let's see, other myths that, other myths about bats. Oh, bats being blind. Bats are not blind. Now, we don't know, some see better than others. Now, like actually the vampire bat, his eyes, if you look at his eyes, they're pretty big compared to, for example, this little guy. Vampire bats do have pretty large eyes, and fruit bats have large eyes too. And the fruit bats that eat during the daytime, well, they don't need to echolocate. They're trying to see fruit in the daytime, and you're gonna see that best by having good eyesight. They're not, so bats are not blind, but in terms of navigating at night, the best way they can see, quote unquote, would be echolocation. So those are a few bat myths. And then the very, I don't want to say popular one, but rabies. So can bats have rabies? Yeah, just like your dog or cat can have rabies, or a raccoon. And that's of course why you must legally, and why we always want to vaccinate our pets. The infection rate among bats is about maybe 1%, which is maybe 1 in 100 bats has rabies. But again, remember, rabies is a fatal disease. So if a bat has rabies, it's gonna kill the bat. The bat's gonna die. In our area, actually, skunks are the primary source of rabies for wildlife. So when you look at rabies numbers, every year in the US, we have, this is average, 2 people die of rabies. That's not from bats, just period. Maybe bats, maybe another animal. 19 to 20 people die from a dog attack. I don't know who has a dog here, but I have a dog and we have a 2-year-old and they play great together. We watch them, but you know, if that's not something we're worried about, spend time up at night about. 62 people every year in the US die from bee, wasp, or hornet stings. And unfortunately, 800 to 1,000 people die from bike accidents. So your chances of dying from rabies are very, 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 very low. And that being said, just like we teach our kids when they're little, I mean, anytime you see a wild animal, you always leave wild animals alone. But especially if an animal's acting strange, of course it could be sick with rabies, with a number of, you know, any other disease. So obviously, just want to reiterate that if an animal's acting weird, of course you shouldn't touch it. We have wildlife rehabilitators in this area. There's a great link if you just Google on Texas Parks and Wildlife website, actually. It's just a good thing to know about. There's wildlife rehabbers listed by county, which is really interesting. And you phone numbers, it says what they specialize in, which is super interesting. But it's definitely nothing to worry about at all. In a little bit, I'll talk about going to bat emergencies, like Linda was mentioning back in cave. Those are a super fun thing to do when it's not COVID, because people are a danger to each other right now, gathering in large groups. But watching bats is nothing to worry about at all. It's super fun to do, and seeing the bats around your yard, your house is a good thing. Just any animal that's not acting normal, you want to keep your distance. Just that's kind of common sense. Okay, bats and COVID. This is really interesting. And just like Dayton and I were talking about, this is one of the reasons that I wanted to talk about bats for this presentation. So scientists aren't sure how the virus responsible for COVID is now in humans. You know, there's lots of theories, but scientists are still working on that, as you know. And this information is straight from the Bat Conservation International website, which is awesome, awesome, awesome resource. Great for kids too, great for all kinds of information. So bats are natural hosts to coronaviruses, which of course, as we know, includes a lot of different viruses. And some, yeah, are closely related to the virus that causes COVID. So meaning some bats can carry diseases related to COVID, but so can other wildlife. And you cannot catch COVID from a bat or other wildlife. You catch it from other people. Bats don't carry COVID. They do not play a role in this disease's spread. There's a really, really interesting, fascinating video on Bat Conservation International that goes into this in more depth. And it talks about basically, unfortunately, when people are destroying the habitat of animals, bats and other animals, we're changing things. You know, if we're trading wildlife, we're interacting with wildlife in ways we shouldn't, we're taking away their habitat, so they're moving into our habitat, so to speak. So these things can affect disease spread. But in terms of watching bats and everything, you don't need to worry about that in terms of COVID at all. So any questions about that or comments? Okay. That was the most intense stuff. Now we're doing the fun stuff. So here I wanted to tell you about some bats of the hill country. So, you know, hopefully, whether you like bats or not, we talked about how they help people, they help the environment. And I want to talk about a few of the ones that live right here in the hill country. There are 14 different species that live around the hill country area. And there's 32 bats that live in Texas. And by the way, in the whole US, there's only 47. So remember, there's 1,400 species of bats. So the US doesn't have very many bats, you know, based on that. But Texas, 32 out of 47, that's a pretty nice, good ratio. So Texas is a very batty state. And our state flying mammal is the Mexican free-tailed bat, which probably most of us have heard of. So these are a few of my favorite hill country bats. This is our state flying mammal, the Mexican free-tailed bat. This is a funny looking little guy, but there you have he has a cute little face. This is the range map of this bat, and he is called Mexican because he's a migratory bat, kind of like many birds migrate and spend the winter in the south and come up to the north in the summer to breed. Same with these guys. In the summer, like I was saying, the hill country has 200 million of these bats. And the largest colony of bats in the whole world is Bracken Cave. And that's not very far from here. It's kind of near Garden Ridge. That's just east of here, and that has 15 million bats. That's a maternity colony, so the females have their babies there, which is so neat. Just show of hands, how many of y'all have been to Bracken Cave and seen the bat emergence? I raised my hand, y'all can't see me. No, okay. So of course, again, this summer, because not of COVID danger with bats, but COVID danger of people gathering, of course, there's not any public bat emergences. But if Bracken Cave is privately owned, it's actually owned by the Bat Conservation International. And if you get a chance, you have to be a member, or if you have a buddy, a friend who's a member, they have non-COVID times in the summertime. You can get with your buddy and make a reservation and go out and get to see the bats. And it is amazing. I've gotten to see it, and it is really, really cool. But yeah, largest colony in the whole world. And this colony alone eats more than 100 tons of that corn earworm moth every night. Just that colony, which is amazing. This is one of the fastest bats. It can fly up to 60 miles an hour. And I have more pictures of this guy because he's so cool. And he's called free-tailed because you can see his little tail sticking out there. And you can see he's not very big. Here's a scientist holding him. Of course, as scientists, we don't hold bats, we don't hold wild animals. The scientists have special training, and scientists who work with bats like that actually do get rabies shots just in case, if you're working with any wild animal like that. But he's a cute little guy. This is a picture I took, actually. I actually took this. It was in Colorado where I went to a bat emergence. I didn't get any I don't think I had my good camera for when I went to Bracken Cave, but they're just really amazing to see these come out. Carlsbad caverns, that's the Mexican free-tailed bats when they come out in huge groups. That's that species too. Here's another species of bat. He's kind of funny looking, pallid bat, sounds like pale. He's a Western bat pretty much, except I noticed he's in Cuba. I noticed that. I thought that was very strange. I don't know what's up with that. But if you look at the mainland North America, he's in the West. And he hunts almost exclusively on the ground, which is fascinating. And he likes to eat centipedes. There's a picture of him earlier. Let's see. Look, see, the guy on the right is the pallid bat. Actually, the guy on the left is too. But on the right, he's eating a centipede. They like to eat centipedes, and they hunt on the ground. My mother-in-law has worked at nature camps, and she's gotten to see them hunting on the ground. I've never seen that. It'd be super cool. And they actually are immune to scorpion stings, which is fascinating. And because nature made them, scorpions one of the foods they eat, and they're immune to scorpion stings. How cool is that? But yeah, pretty much a Western bat. Any questions before we go on with the rest of these cool bats? I don't have all 14, I just have a few.
I just wanted to ask, when you're looking at the sky, sometimes I can't tell if I'm seeing a bat or a bird. Is there a way to definitely tell that's a bat, not a bird?
Yeah, good question. I'm excited to try to answer that because I love birding, and I'm a birder, not big time, but a hardcore birder. So I love birds too. So of course, obviously the time of day, but that doesn't rule everything out, because oftentimes when the bats are coming out, the other birds are going to bed, like swallows, and they swoop and fly a lot in the air. One of the things I look for, or actually what I look for is, you can actually, let me see if I can, trying to see if, okay, so this picture here, obviously you're never going to see them this well, but what I really look for when they fly is the type of flying they do is a little different. Bats have that kind of erratic, very erratic, kind of all over the place flight. And the bird that I can think of, the two birds that I can think of that fly most similar to bats are swallows, which if you're familiar with, like with cliff swallows and barn swallows that nest on your porch, have the long tail. Swifts are another bird that flies very similar. It's swift, like a swift jet engine. It's called swift, and they look very similar to swallows. But one thing I really look for is at the end of their wing, they look similar, but you see how their wing gets wider, and then up by their body, their wing is really wide. Compared to a bird is the way I think of it. That's what you can't tell this in the picture, but when I see it, I look for that. I look for, I guess, what would be the armpit to the shoulder on us. I look for that. Sometimes if they're flying low, you can even see their cute little ears. I think that's adorable, but I'm kind of biased. So you can see ears. Of course, birds don't have ears like that. But to me, okay, the two things are the flight pattern in terms of how they're flying, and then the shape of the animal itself. That's a really good question. I don't know if I answered that very well, but those are what I look for.
I'll be on the lookout.
Okay, yeah, that's what I would do. And of course, obviously, because they're coming out at dusk, usually there's not going to be as many birds flying around. But sometimes, like this morning on my way to work, I live in San Antonio and I go on I-10, and I saw I think there were bats going down to roost underneath the bridge on one of the overpasses. But that time of day, you could have swallows, and I'm going 70 miles an hour. I can't tell, but yeah, if you're not driving or whatever, those are the things I look for: flight pattern and the shape of the actual critter itself. That's a great question. How fun. Any other questions at the moment? Okay, so this is another bat called the canyon bat. He used to be called a pipistrelle, which I think is a really fun, cute little name for the smallest bat in North America. He's got that black face. He likes to roost in cracks in boulders or rock faces. And scientists have thought that they might even use burrows made by kangaroo rats and other rodents, which is really, really fun. This bat, actually, I got a lot of this information from Bat Conservation International, and I went to a training before the pandemic, actually, to be a bat ambassador, which is really cool. And I got a lot of the photos from that. And actually, this wasn't in my folder of San Antonio area bats, so maybe this isn't often found here, but this bat should be found around the park. And I used a bat detector the other day, and it thought I had this bat, so that's pretty cool. This is a really neat bat called the Seminole bat, and where it is in the U.S., if you look, it's pretty much the southeast, and it's associated with Spanish moss because it likes to roost, that's sleeping during the day in Spanish moss, which I think just sounds magical, but it's not magic, it's science. And in East Texas, they will roost singly, so one at a time in a pine tree, and they'll look like a pine cone, like in between amongst the needles. And I thought this was interesting that in the deep South, they don't hibernate. They live there year round, but then they'll be active during the winter when the temperature's warm enough, around 70 or so degrees or warmer, which, in the South, that can be quite a few nights, even in the winter. So this is when I want to try to share my video, and I don't know if it's going to work, and I really hope it does, because I had so much fun doing it. So I'm going to, let's see. So Bethany, I'm going to try to see, I just see now. Okay. Chat, sorry. Yeah, I wondered if it was introduced to Cuba too. I have no idea. I wondered the same thing. And yes, exactly. None of 3 species target human blood, exactly. Okay, so I'm going to see if this video will play. And I really hope it does. Okay, wait, I might. Bethany, do you think I should click that thing, or do you think I shouldn't because of the issues?
Try. I don't think you're going to have sound. Do you need sound?
Yes.
Okay. Try just playing a few seconds and see if you have sound. And if not, you're going to have to reshare and click with sound. Maybe don't click the second option.
Sure. Okay. Just a second. Screen share. I'm going to go ahead and stop it and do it again because I don't know how to do that otherwise.
Okay, yeah, it sounds good.
And I don't need to turn my volume up because this is the videos, right?
Yes, that's correct.
I feel like I don't know anything about technology.
Oh, you're fine.
Okay. Share. Here we go. Share screen, and I do want to share the computer sound, but I don't want to optimize.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You can see the video? Okay. You're gonna just flag me if because I don't want to waste 4 minutes if it's totally not showing anything. Okay. Bethany, you can just raise your hand.
So I'm down at the river at Guadalupe River State Park, and I have our bat detector with us. So this is the bat detector itself, and it takes the sounds coming in and it brings them down to a level that we can hear and displays them on the iPad in a visual format. So it's taking the sounds and making a picture of it, really. So let's listen. We'll look at it in a minute, but let's listen right now. So that's bats chattering. We can listen in a different way here. See if we hear any. So that's pretty cool. tool. It's not detecting any and auto-identifying them for me right now, but if I get out of the live mode here and I look at some of our recordings, let's check it out. Okay, so these are just ones I've done in the past 20 minutes or so. So here's one. It was 14 seconds long. Let's listen. So that's cool. You can listen to a different way. That's very cool. It's just bringing it down to different levels. It's kind of interpreting it down to how human ears can hear. Okay, and this was, when I click on the bat picture, it says it was a Seminole bat or a Western yellow bat. And it thinks it's probably the Seminole bat. And if I click on the information, there's a picture of it. Super cool. If I go back, let's go back to our other recordings. Let's listen to some other ones I did. This was about 45 minutes ago. And it thinks it was a southern yellow bat. Look at the picture. And it is kind of yellow. Has some gray hair going on there. And then if I X out of that, I can listen to it again. What you're seeing on the bottom of the screen go by is, like I said, a depiction of the sound. I like that one. Let's listen to a different way. That was short. Let's listen to another way. It sounds like little space guns. So let's look. I want to show you a third one. This just gives you an idea. There's about 14 different species of bats that can be found in the hill country, and tonight it's identified at least 3. This is what I'm showing you. Here's this southern yellow bat. I think we looked at that already. Let's see. We saw him already. I'll get a different one. Let's see here. Here we go. Canyon bat. This guy's really cool. He looks different. He's got that black face. If I go back, we can listen to him. These little green marks are showing it's descending, and it sounds really cool. This is another kind of twittering. So the bat detector is really cool, and it's just a neat tool to bring the high-pitched sound of bats doing their echolocation down so we can hear them. And then a tool like this to show on the iPad is really neat because we can see what they look like, because you can't see them because it's in the dark. So really neat tool to have.
Okay, so that was from last week. So when I went to that training, I was telling y'all about, for the Bat Conservation International, they, for the folks who attended that training. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, Bethany, I will do the stop share if it gives us grief, but if not, I guess we're good. Okay, so I used this, I just plugged in this little device into the iPad, and then that, of course, like you can see in the video, it takes the high-pitched frequencies of the bat echolocation and it brings them down, not only so we can hear it, but then you can click and see what kinds of bats are there. So that's really fun. Before the pandemic, when we did a night hike, which is normally an activity I do at least about once a month here at the park for the public. I have not been doing with the pandemic because social distancing is definitely harder in the dark. But anyway, I will do them again in the future, whenever that will be. But we did one at Honey Creek State Natural Area here at the park, and we had, it was really fun. We could hear the bats going overhead, or we could see what kinds they were. So that's just a really fun tool. Just wrapping up here, like we're talking about, bat watching is a really fun thing to do. If you've ever been to Austin area, of course you've been to Austin, but if you've ever been to Congress Street or Congress Avenue Bridge, huge number of bats come out there. Any of y'all done that? I've done that. You've seen the bats come out. Okay, yeah, Linda has, yeah, it's really fun. Bracken Cave, like I said, I mean, it's just amazing, this huge, and the number of bats leaving that cave, it just goes on and on and on. Devil's Sinkhole State Natural Area, which is northwest of here in Rock Springs. That's a part of Parks and Wildlife, and that's a really neat area too. I've actually gotten to go there too.
That's my hometown. I love the Devil's Sinkhole. It's really cool.
Rock Springs?
Yes, yes.
Crazy, yeah. I got together when I worked at South Llano River in Junction.
Cool. Yeah, no, it's actually really neat. I've been on it like twice or 3 times or something. So
It's really
it's
neat. And I sent Bethany some PDFs from Bat Conservation International that talk about different areas of, actually one from Parks and Wildlife, different areas you can bat watch in Texas. But even just seriously around your neighborhood, there's also a nice colony that's on I-10, and there's one that's downtown. That's where they have the bat loco by the Riverwalk, by the grotto. If you're familiar with the Riverwalk grotto, where they have this like cave, it's a pretend cave that they built, and there's hanging fish that are lit up and everything. That grotto, if you look it up, that's where you can see bats come out. Northwest, kind of near on I-10, and I think it's near Bernie Stage. It's just the one exit north of there. There's a nice, no, it is Bernie Stage. Sorry, there's a bat colony there too. It's very noisy with the highway, but if you get there the right time at night, you can see them come out from under I-10 at Bernie Stage Road on the west side. So how we can help bats, of course, we've been talking about dispelling myths and rumors. When your family's like, hey, did you hear we all, they got COVID-19 from bats, stupid bats or whatever, you can tell them the truth, of course. Good websites, batcon.org is Bat Conservation International. Parks and Wildlife has good information. Writing an article about the benefits of bats for your newspaper, relevant right now with COVID-19 or good around Halloween. You could plant native plants around your yard that encourages insects, like not bringing mosquitoes, but other kinds of insects that you want that the bats will eat too. You could build or buy or install a bat house. If you are going to do that, make sure that if you're going to build it, there's some really important instructions to follow. Like it needs to be big enough. It needs to have the right spacing for the bats because they smush in them really close, like crammed apartment complex. But they do use the bat houses, some species more than others. And that's a neat way to bring in the bats or to try to see them. And yeah, so anyway, that was a kind of quick fun, at least I had fun, I hope y'all did, but just about how bats help people, bats help nature, and why we don't need to be afraid of them, and just a quick snapshot of some of the different bats that live here in the hill country.